Our next group will be debating on transgender equality. We will be having our first group be arguing that individuals should be free to choose, Johnna and Jordan will be arguing that individuals should be free to choose the bathroom they feel most comfortable in, while Hailey and Helaman will be arguing that individuals should only be permitted to use the restrooms that they match with anatomically. We will have Hailey and Helaman go first.
We are arguing that individuals should only be permitted to use the restrooms that they match with anatomically, as previously stated. There's a quote here that we got from census.gov, and it says, "A fundamental distinction in transgender studies in between the concepts of sex and gender. Generally speaking, the term sex is used to refer to the biological characteristics that are used to characterize individuals as male, female, or intersex. The concept of gender, on the other hand, refers to the socially constructed roles, behaviors, activities, and attributes that a given society considers appropriate for men and women, who usually a person's gender is assigned by society at birth, based correctly or incorrectly on the assessment of that person's biological sex. The term transgender describes anyone who lives their life identifying as and expressing a different gender than the one assigned to them at birth." So, according to this, basically, according to the roles that I play in my life, or how I act, that will characterize me in my sex or my gender, my identity, correct? So, really, if we were going to push it to the extremes, I could, pretend to act like a dog or a giraffe. I can behave like one. I can eat off the floor. I can, do whatever. And I can just choose to be identified with an animal, right? But that doesn't mean that they will be making bathrooms for me to use in public areas if I demand it, right? And the reason for that, one of the reasons, is because I would be the minority group. And that's something that we all need to remember as well, that the transgender community and the population is a minority in the United States population and overall in the world. We need to be able to have a line between male and female because it's been muddied, and individuals, become unidentifiable with the more, separate that we get away from, I think it's called sanity, So that is our opening.
I say to you, quite frankly, that the time for discrimination is over. Jamie Carter. I believe in human beings and that all human beings should be respected as such. Malcolm X. America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. Abraham Lincoln. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Martin Luther King Jr. These words were once spoken by men who died believing that this country, God's country, a free country, would be a place where discrimination did not exist. A place where black, white, bond and free, male and female would be considered equals, equals who are entitled to inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These men and many others sacrificed everything to ensure that we could one day be what we want to be, believe what we want to believe, and live as we want to live. So let me ask you this. Who are you to decide who gets to follow those rights and believe in those rights? What have you sacrificed for this country to ensure that we get to choose and believe and act as we want to? I would say that many of you haven't sacrificed much or anything as you sit here at this private university, being able to worship freely and bear testimony daily and open class with a prayer. For these reasons and the reasons why this country was founded, we believe that individuals should be able to use the bathroom that they feel they are most comfortable in. Being for transgender equality, we are arguing on behalf of those who feel that others shouldn't tell them who or what they should be, but rather they are free to choose for themselves. We will be defending the people's right to identify and express their true selves according to the gender of their choosing. We believe that it is a right we all share to be able to use whichever bathroom that we feel most comfortable in. Thank you.
So with the freedom and liberty to self-identify comes the conflict between self-assigned versus gender-identified restrooms. Population surveys gathered from UCLA Law states that in between 2007 and 2009, only 0.3% of US adults aged 18 to 64 identify as transgender. That is less than 1% of the US adult population that we are mandating laws for. With 96.5% of the US adult population identifying as heterosexual, how can we justify laws in favor of the minority that will undeniably affect the majority? Llewellyn Rockwell, author, political commentator, and former congressional staffer stated, "Democracy has turned out not to be majority rule, but rule by well-organized, well-connected minority groups who steal from the majority. Why hate monarchs?" Rockwell highlights the fact that our government has been reduced to a shouting match, the louder wines receiving compensation. The focus of our government needs to be on the best outcome for the majority of the people. We should refrain from bowing to the whines and complaints of the smaller percentage of America, or else we are going to increase the number of exceptions and ratifications to the law, which will then render it kind of worthless. By creating all of these clauses and allowances in our laws, we are just breaking down further the laws and rules that we created to originally govern the United States, and will then hinder any growth in that area. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to start by addressing the discrimination that transgenders are currently experiencing. They mentioned terms like discrimination in minority, and weren't African Americans a minority back in the day, and they were discriminated. It's the exact same thing, and they deserve the same rights that anybody else does. So I found an excerpt from transequality.org that said, "It is clear that there are people who are aware that they are transgender from their earliest memories. Many trans people feel that their gender identity is an innate part of them, an integral part of who they were born to be. Then there are people who feel that everyone has a right to choose whatever gender they feel most comfortable in. People should have the freedom to express themselves in whatever way is right for them. And for transgender equality, they honestly feel most like themselves when they dress like the opposite gender. And many of them go through rigorous processes to become this. Some social conservative states mandate that people use the bathroom that matches the sex on their birth certificate. And for transgender people, this is an extremely difficult thing to change on your birth certificate, what gender you are, and there's a long process that it accompanies. And also, how many people are honestly carrying their birth certificate with them at all times? It's not probable. And so several states are making it easier for transgenders to change their birth certificate with the modernization process, claiming that it is a bureaucratic indicator decided by somebody else that should not be weighed against transgenders' innate sense of self. And we all want to feel comfortable in our own skin. And for transgender individuals, that truly means identifying with their opposite gender. So the thing that really we want to emphasize here is that transgenders go through a very long process of becoming, like, legally a transgender. They have to go through, I have a list right here, so counseling with a mental health professional, a real-life experience where where an individual lives as the target gender for a trial period. They go through hormone therapy, surgical processes. They have to get all their legal documentation changed, such as their legal name, driver's license, social security account, passport, credit cards, leases, medical records, birth certificate, academic records. And from the sound of this, you can't complete this in the span of a week. This can take years. Some people can't afford this process. And the problem is the issue is happening now, and some people don't have time for this, and they feel extremely threatened when they have to go into a bathroom that they don't identify with. So people are dying over this issue, and the battle for legal action is proving to be ineffective and rejected by the transgender community. A study by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and the Williams Institute concluded that 41% of transgenders have attempted suicide because of the discrimination they face. Now, bullying and hate accompany this issue, and it's a serious problem going on right now. So the battle is ineffective, honestly, because there was a law placed in North Carolina called HB2, which prohibits transgenders from using the bathroom that they feel most comfortable in. And it's not very effective because the criminal punishment for it is $200. There's nothing that goes on your record, and it's pretty much a speeding ticket. So honestly, how many of you in here have got a speeding ticket? Like, you know that speeding is or you know that it's illegal, but you still do it because there's just a chance of a small fine. So it's not going to stop transgenders from going into the bathroom that they identify with. And let's see here. So the state claims that they don't want transgenders to feel like criminals, but why are they being prosecuted? Already this law is proving to be ineffective, and transgender equality sued the court within days of the law being passed, and widespread protests such as taking selfies in the illegal bathroom is going on right now. So the problem is, like, we don't see how this can be regulated either, because you're never going to have an officer at every bathroom who's checking everybody's birth certificates when they walk in. People are still going to use the bathroom that they feel comfortable in, and you know, it's just up to the person who is in there who could actually like say, hey, this person's transgender, I'm going to call the police, and at that point, you know, the person would probably be gone. So we just don't see that as an effective way of going about that. So we believe and argue that transgenders are human beings. They are no different than us and simply choose to express themselves in ways that they are comfortable with. They face prosecution and discrimination for what they believe in, and we urge each and every one of you to fight for equality and to support a better life for transgenders. Thank you.
And up at the projector, here we have a slide full of pictures of men and women who've undergone various different forms of a transgender sex change. Some have had the surgery, some have been taking hormone supplements, and some simply just cross-dress. And I ask you, which one of these looks the most threatening? Which one of these makes you feel unsafe or uncomfortable? And if you ran into one of these people, who would you feel threatened by? Who would you feel unsafe around? Many of you are familiar with the store Target and their recent change in their policy where transgenders, while they're in the store Target, can use whichever bathroom that they identify with. And in the media, we saw a huge uproar of disgust for those who felt unsafe because they were worried about sending their children into a bathroom where there might be someone who's of transgender identity and what safety and sexual issues that poses on their children. When I first heard about this, I was a little bit confused because I thought to myself, how many times have I gone in the bathroom and even cared about who was in there? How many of you walk in there and take notes of how many people or what kind of people or what people look like while you're using the restroom? Times Magazine has shown no evidence that has been uncovered since this change in rule in Target that there has been any sort of sexual misconduct, there has been no issue with safety, there has been no threat that would back up this concern that the general population has. And I say that that concern is valid, but I think that concern would be valid with any type of anyone using a bathroom. I think if you're sending your child into the bathroom, you have to know that there's a risk that some random person could walk in there, and whether it's a boy or a girl, there's no one monitoring who's using what bathroom, when, and where. So how, again, to our argument, how are we going to monitor who's coming into the bathroom and who's coming out of the bathroom?
Our opponent stated how people of African American descent were the minority and how they deserved rights. We are not arguing about our inalienable rights, which are outlined in our Constitution and that all people have in the United States today, including transgenders. If my memory serves correctly, using the bathrooms that I self-identify with isn't one of those. Public restrooms is not an issue of the country. It is the problem of the enterprises that have those public restrooms. They are not government owned. They also said that we support the discrimination of transgenders. That is incorrect. We never even said the word discriminate. On to a more important matter, the safety of the American people. Nothing is mentioned about bathrooms in the Constitution, but there is much about our safety. Opening the bathroom door to all genders consequently opens a door for child predators and sexual violence. Without the discernment of sexes, anyone is free to enter whichever bathroom they desire. Our opponent even stated that there is no possible way to regulate it. Now, my previous statement isn't one used to invoke trans panic or to imply that transgender individuals are sexual predators. But as a result of their intersex bathrooms, predators can easily claim transgender orientation for their own vile intentions, and it lacks a regulation. So, for all anyone cares, I could claim to be a woman and go into a woman's bathroom, and I'm not saying I would, and don't take this the wrong way, but I could rape a woman, right? And that could be anyone in the United States that could do that today, right? And all that they would have would either be a rape lawsuit or a little fine, a little ticket, right, of $200. So we need to have security in those bathrooms, and we don't. And allowing this to happen will totally blow away that security. And people, including children, your children, or if you don't have children, yourselves, that leaves you all up to risk for, endangering yourselves. So take your pick of what you'd like.
Starch say that there's nothing about transgender bathrooms in the Constitution is one of the most ignorant things I've ever heard. There's a lot that is not explicitly identified in the Constitution. There's a lot about racism, there's a lot about discrimination, there's a lot about voting, there's a lot about fine line things that are not explicitly written out in the Constitution. The idea of the Constitution was to show that it's not so much about what, but who, that we are all people. It is not in the nitty-gritty, but it is to be treated as a person. We believe that people should be able to use whichever restroom that they identify with, because if it's not just the restrooms, it's going to continue to be segregated pools. It will continue on to be segregated drinking fountains. And this is where it all starts, with this one little thing which we justify as a safety hazard, and it will only continue to grow as more and more of an issue as the transgender population continues to grow. Thank you.
We are arguing that individuals should not be permitted to use the restrooms that they match with anatomically. Should only be permitted, sorry. This should not be a problem for transsexuals. Our opponent said that many are undergoing sex reassignment surgeries anyways, so why can't they use the bathrooms that they now match with? So why do we have to adjust all of our laws according to the minority? This country is set on the principles of a democracy. When has the minority ever had grounds to change the ways that we live, right? It's always a majority, right? It's not the president that has the least votes, it's the president that has the most votes, right? And on this subject, it's the people that want transsexuals, right, to use the bathrooms that they have matched with anatomically to be so. Again, remember that safety is at stake here. We have seen in recent years mass killings in movie theaters and other public places. We don't need to make it easier for people to commit more acts of terror. We are on the side that transgenders should use the bathrooms that they match with anatomically so that they can in turn be safe, so that they will not face abuse once they go into whatever bathroom. If they're using the bathrooms that they match with anatomically, they won't be abused, and in turn, the other people will be safe as well, right? And I think the statement about, water fountains and all that, I think that's a little blown up. That's a little bit to kind of persuade you about something that's not realistic. I mean, right now, there's no discrimination on that. Anyone can use whatever water fountain they want. Right now, the issue is safety of the people. Thank you.